Hello, everyone. My name is Sayami Zoekar. I'm a psychotherapist and a student with Apara India. Today, on the occasion of International Yoga Day, we are in conversation with Dr. Sanjay Ranade. He's a director. He's not only the director of Apara India, he's also completed his master's in psychology with specialization in counseling and has a PhD in politics. He pursues research on various topics in the Indian communities, Indian communication design, and Indian psychology, and has published several papers in peer reviewed journals and also written and published books as well as chapters in international publications. He's also done his diploma in yoga and is currently pursuing his master's in Vedic studies. Welcome, Dr. Sanjay. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Right.
So
Right.
today, what we'll be doing is having this wonderful conversation on what is yoga's take, or how does yoga view the phenomenon or the difficulty of trauma, and how does it look at healing trauma. So can you please help us understand trauma from a yogic perspective?
Trauma, for the whole concept of trauma is, it really began to be articulated by the Sankhyas. In the Sankhya, right at the beginning of the Sankhya Karika, we find the first time the introduction of this whole idea of the three tapa. So there is an Adi Bhautik tapa, the Adi Daivik tapa, and the Adhyatmika tapa.
Okay.
And this tapa is actually some things that trouble us. They kind of raise objections, but very fundamentally, they are they are things which we encounter when we begin to question our condition.
Okay.
That we are in some kind of a condition, and we begin to question, why me, why at this time, and why not that person, or why just at this point or this moment or this place. So the questioning of that condition is where the whole game begins, and it is very traumatic because it makes us insecure. It questions our understanding of reality, of the environment. There is a very interesting part in the Veda, in the Rig Veda, where the Rig Veda says, this is in the Nyasa Sutra. So what it is saying actually is that there is a very intimate connection between the manifest and the unmanifest. And a lot of this thing that we are is unmanifest, avyakta. And just a little bit is really vyakta. And we understand even a very little bit of what is vyakta. But the relationship between the manifest and the unmanifest is very intimate. And this relationship is triggered through desire or karma. So that karma is desire, which actually produces this whole, which is a result of this intimate relationship between the manifest and the unmanifest. And the moment that karma is triggered, it results to karma.
Results to karma.
Yeah. So all karma is essentially rooted in karma, and all karma is rooted in that very intimate closeness between the manifest and the unmanifest. Now, when you go years, centuries later to the Sankhya, then the Sankhya says that the condition that we are in, it causes us to protest. It leads us to protest this condition. And it is that protest which is the seed of us trying to find a solution. Jidnyasa is the word that the Sankhya use. Okay. They both mean inquiry, desire, that is where the whole thing starts. So unless we question the condition we are in, if I'm absolutely comfortable, let us say I'm being robbed right now, but I'm quite comfortable with it, I will do nothing about it. It will not at all be traumatic because I'm fine with it. The moment that the condition is questioned and we begin to come to that point, then that jidnyasa opens up, and that jidnyasa or that karma leads us to some kind of karma. This is the approach of Indian thought on this whole business of trauma. So there is a lot of unfinished business going on.
True, absolutely. So also the way I see it and what I hear you say is, when we question ourselves is when the desires that we hold are somewhat in contradiction to what the reality is on the outside. Would that be a right way of putting it?
Even inside, not
Okay.
just outside. That intimacy is a very interesting Indian idea. Nowhere else do you find it. That
Yeah.
between the manifest and the unmanifest, there is an intimacy. It is a very close relationship, almost like love.
Mhm.
And which is why we have very interesting dualities. If there is Lakshmi, there is a Lakshmi.
Ha.
So
Got
the
it.
reason
Yeah.
is so the reason is so the relationship is so intimate, and that intimacy is something which is the beauty of it. Whether if it is Purusha and the Prakriti, there is an intimate relationship. They are each functioning for the other, but they are functioning in themselves.
In
But
themselves.
so the Jiva and the Shiva, again, a very intimate relationship. So between the universe and me, there is a very intimate relationship.
And
And
you're saying it is when that there is a conflict in that intimacy is when we start questioning or we feel stuck, and that is when
yeah,
trauma occurs.
so life is in a flow, and any kind of trauma, any kind of protest, it stops that flow, or it diverts that flow, or it changes that flow. And then, unless we act upon it, we cannot bring it back, or we cannot accept what has happened. Etc. There are a lot of various levels of this. So it is not necessary that the flow, the break of the flow, or the turn of the flow is good or bad. It is just
Hmm.
that the trauma changes the flow. So we have to then bring it back. We have to structure it. We have to condition it. We have to get it
Realign
back.
it.
Uh, so yoga is essentially putting this thing, that is the movement. The yoga is a movement. It is not something that is going on. It is a movement when they combine, and the whole thing becomes peaceful or
That's,
quiet.
I think, such a wonderful thing that you just said, that yoga is a moment. Because a lot of us who have been studying or reading or looking at what essentially people are saying about yoga seems many times very limited to asanas and pranayams. So when we're looking at working with trauma through a yogic perspective, what tools can we have other than the body work and the breath work to work with trauma, or to be able to come to that moment of healing or union, or just
Deep.
bringing the
Uh,
balance?
so this entire problem of the protest, or the whole question of the trauma, it is at various levels of consciousness. Now, either we work on the jiva or the shiva, or we work on both. So
Hmm.
when we work on the jiva, then one of the aspects of the jiva is the deha, or the body. So that is where the breathing, or the exercise, or the poses, they come at that point. That if I keep my body in a particular, this jiva, if I keep it in a particular manner, the spine is in this way, the eyes are fixed here, the breathing, etc., then the other parts, other aspects of this jiva will align themselves to that thing. But if you look at it carefully, you will find that apart from the physical, there is also the mental, the manasik level. Then
Yeah.
there is a pranic level. Then there is a vital. So what Aurobindo talks about. So all of these levels are real. So there are ways in which you address them. So for instance, reading of text,
Hmm.
bibliotherapy, or writing of text, scriptotherapy, or performing of text. We actually perform, such as something like a kirtana. So we perform the kirtan, and while performing the kirtan, we are going into the same thing. So this can be addressed at various levels depending on how deep the questioning process is. If it is like Vivekananda, when he was asked that, by a person, that can I find God, so Vivekananda took him to the seashore and suddenly put his neck under the water, and he kept struggling to take breath, and he let him know. So he said, while you are underwater, did you think of God? So he says, no. Well, when you think of God with that desperation, you'll find him. So the idea is that how deep is this trauma? So in the Bhagavad Gita, we are told that there are different kinds of people seeking this idea, and then there are the artha jidnyasu, So most of us are in the artha condition, in the sense that, oh God, now my salary is not coming. Oh God, give me my salary. So once the salary comes, I forget God and I am on my way. So we are all at that level. So artha, jidnyasu, then yogi, and then jnani. So at what level are we? That is where you need help. You need therapy, or you need conversations, and in a lot of our therapy, in Indian therapy, therapy is not one to one. We are therapetizing each other. It is like therapy works that way. It is not a lecture or a single person. So self work is assumed in all Indian modalities. Self work is assumed. We are all doing self work, and while we are doing it, oh, you want some help? Okay, this is what I did. And then, like the Wari. So it is actually like a Wari. Now, this is Ashadi, the month of Ashad. So the Wari is going on. So the Wari is essentially, we are all walking, Vithala, 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 and the Wari is going. And while I am doing it, you are also doing it. And if you are a little bit more hungry than I am, you can take my bread. But if I want a little more water, you can give me your water to me. And that's how we are going to be going. So we are on the journey, on the path. The position is not that I have arrived and now I'll direct you. That position is not there in Indian therapeutic means.
So, what you're saying is it is not a very individualistic point of view. Here, we look at it from a community healing point of view where I am going, but you're going with me, and we are going together. And
It is a
that
social model.
exchange that we
Yeah.
can have with each other is what can bring about healing at different levels.
Yeah, it is a social model, not a medical model.
Ah,
It is a social model. It is an ethical model. Because our ethics keep changing. It is not a static thing. So it is an ethical model. It is a moral model. It is a social model. It is not a medical model. That is very clear, that we do not deal with it from the medical model. We deal with the soul phenomena in a social model because we have context. All of us have context. And regardless of how urbanized we become, we all have context. So there is this feeling that we become urbanized, so we become disconnected from everything else, and systems take over. But then behind those systems, behind every algorithm is a human brain. Behind every computer algorithm is an ideology.
Yes.
That ideology may be making money or consumerism or whatever, but there is an ideology behind an algorithm. The algorithm doesn't exist on its own. It was made to exist for a specific purpose. So we recognize that purpose, not just the algorithm.
That's such a wonderful way of putting it. So, we've been hearing or we've been understanding yoga most of the times from a very spiritual point of view. Right now, when you're telling, now when you're talking about the collectivism of it, the healing at various levels of the being and various levels of the consciousness, what I wanted to ask you is the therapeutic approach of yoga different from the spiritual approach, or is it on a continuum on the same path?
The spiritual aspect is one part of it. We are living, see, there are overall, we are like living at something like 8 levels of existence. So there is a deha, there is a ahankara, mana, buddhi, all of those, and then finally the atma, paramatma, etc. So it's not, the spiritual cannot be achieved without the physical well-being. You cannot have, very simply, I cannot give you lessons in honesty when your stomach is empty. Morality and ethics can be taught and understood on a full stomach. If you are hungry and you are desperate for food or water or something, and if I'm going to tell you lessons on ethics and well-being, you will say, forget it, just give me my water right now. So physical well-being, mental well-being, our vitality and spirituality, they are very, very intimately linked. So it cannot be separated. You cannot have, I cannot be beating my wife up and become a spiritual person. It has to reflect. See, it will penetrate, permeate all levels. So my relationships will become that way. My relationship with, I can't be a person killing cockroaches and say that I'm intellectual.
Sure.
If you're intellectual, then you have to understand that every being has a right to exist. See, so I can't be. It is like saying, I've got a dog in my house and I'm an animal lover. You can't be an animal lover and have a dog in your house. If you are a true animal lover, you should be in the dog's house.
True. Absolutely.
You're forcing the animal to live a human being's life, and then you have these people saying, "Oh, my dog loves Shrikhand or whatever." Dogs, it is not dog food. That's not what a dog is. If you really truly love that character, please go and live on the streets with him. I mean, I'm
You
sure
let
dogs will
them be
like.
in their nature, in their own nature, right?
Yeah, you're dragging that animal out, putting that animal in a 800 square feet house, and then you say you're an animal lover, or people smoking in the public and then saying I'm very concerned about the environment. Well, you are like a chimney which is throwing out all this into the environment. Stop that first, and then we'll discuss the environment later. But it has to permeate into real life. So spiritual is not cut off from the material. It is in the Bhagavad Gita, the adhisthana of all spirituality is deha.
Yes.
Unless you have a deha,
You
there
will
is no
not be
spirituality.
true.
So you have to take care of this deha. It has to be strong, it has to be vibrant, it has to be alive, it has to be fed, right? And then the spirituality is also equally mature, etc. But I mean, just going hungry for days together doesn't increase or decrease spirituality. It probably changes the blood pressure or probably the heart rate, but that's all.
True. So for somebody practicing yoga or having a therapeutic approach to healing trauma in themselves or working with the clients and patients who come to them, being authentic to
Yeah.
living authentically is one of the most essential skills as well as tools on this path and approach, right?
Yes.
Um,
You have to wear your bias and your prejudice on your sleeve.
yes.
It is there. You just have to do it. There is no running away from it. It is true that we are biased, we are subjects, we are subjective,
Yes.
and we have to acknowledge that and be able to deal with it. Or if you're not able to deal with it, you have to say that, well, this one I can't deal with. I'm not able to do it, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong in it, but you have to be able to carry that bias or that prejudice and be completely open and transparent about it.
True. True. So, we keep talking about having trauma informed approaches. Now, from everything that you're telling me, I find yoga as an approach to be all encompassing. But I will still go ahead and ask this so that, it is really spelled out there, that would you consider yoga to be a trauma informed approach?
It is, yes. Because like I said, my yearning for yoga cannot happen till I admit the trauma in myself first. If I'm absolutely satisfied with my condition, I'm very happy where I am, what I am, I don't want anything, I'm completely contented, then there is no reason for you to do anything. Don't go
Yeah.
doing yoga and all that. You are already in a yogic state,
Hmm.
which is the state of balance. You're already there, so why bother? It is that understanding of trauma that I am traumatized. I am traumatized at maybe the physical level or at the level of the ahankara or the mana or the buddhi or whatever. I am facing situations, and it is a I want to change. I want to bring about some change in my condition.
Hmm.
So identifying condition, preparing the tools to deal with that
Yeah.
condition, because I need to be fit at different levels to be able to deal with the trauma, and then finally dealing with it and overcoming it. And so just fighting trauma is not enough. Something that we learn with resilience therapy. See, it
Yes.
is not enough to just be able to bear the burden. You have to then be able to overcome and move on.
Move on.
So resilience will happen. If you keep hitting me here, eventually I will become numb enough not to get hit or not to get hurt.
Hurt.
But that doesn't mean that it is not happening. I need to learn to deal with this. So that is the level we have to reach. It is about resilience, building very deep resilience by understanding, by working on it, and so it is a continuous process.
And also rediscovering yourself, right, on many levels
Yes.
post you how do I put it, uh, post acknowledging and addressing the trauma or the question that has created conflict, to rediscover yourself and evolve to something more or something different than what you are today. That
Yes.
is what we
That
would call
those
as post traumatic growth as well in
Yeah, those
in the
two
convention.
words, two words which really are very important signifiers. One is swadhyaya and the other is swabhava.
Hmm.
So that swadhyaya is literally what we are doing is keeping the book of this is a book which I keep in front of me, and I keep shifting, keep turning the chapter as I understand it, every page by page by page. That is literally Swadhyaya. We have to open this, that the metaphor that is given is that of a lotus. So there
Hmm.
is a lotus at the base of our body, and then there is a lotus above and a lotus above, till you go to that 1,000 petal white lotus. So all those metaphors are essentially saying that this book needs to be read.
Yes. Yes.
This is not a book that has been understood and read. There are so many things in this book, that so many pages which are, in the dark, and I need to get the light, and I need to store that light because it goes away, and
Hmm.
then I need to build on that light. And only when there is light will knowledge happen. So always Saraswati is here and Lakshmi is here, because that Lakshmi gives me light. And then with that light, Saraswati comes in, because
Emerge.
otherwise Saraswati is going out in the darkness. Can't. So the books are lying around, but I can't read them. I can't see them. That, I don't know, all of us go through this confusion when we are in just going into college or whatever. We go into something, a big library, and then our first question is, where do I begin?
Begin. True.
So many books, so as a teacher, there are a lot of people a lot of students, they see me reading a book, and which was the first book that you read? How do you choose a book? That is the problem with us. So which page do I begin? When I'm looking at this book, I am confused. Which page do I begin? Because there are all kinds of sheets of papers and this library and this book, and I need to keep opening. So that is Swadhyaya, and how I do it is the Swabhava.
Okay. All right.
So I could tear into those books, or I could go page by page or line by line, or I could keep tick marking, or I could put bookmarks or what. All of that is my Swabhava, how
Yes.
I do it.
The process of it all.
Yeah, the process. And it is different for everybody.
Everybody.
So yoga therapy encourages you to do Swadhyaya, to figure out your Swabhava. And once that reading becomes rhythmic, that I know I can read myself, and I'm reading myself. So I become watchful. The typical word is mindfulness. So you become
Yes.
mindful. Right?
Yes.
So Visheshe Pashyanti iti Vipassana. So
Hmm.
to look a special way. So I begin to look in a special way at myself, at this book, or these pages. And that is the Swadhyaya, and that is part of my Swabhava. Once it becomes structured, then the reading begins to happen. And as the reading begins to happen, the light comes. And when the light comes, then Saraswati, Mahasaraswati will come.
And then you are able to move forward and
Yeah.
overcome, like you said. Yes. Thank you so much. This has been really, really enlightening. And I think just one last question before we stop is, as psychotherapists, not everybody is trained in yoga or may do yoga every day. But there are, like you said, many tools which are not just limited to the asanas or the body work or the breath work, but a lot of things at the mental level that a person can do, that the therapist can equip themselves with to be able to address trauma work better. So, could
Yeah.
you probably suggest one or two resources or tools like that that a therapist could equip themselves with for trauma
One
work?
is rasa. The rasa therapy is a very, very good therapy. What happens is, in rasa, Natya Shastra talks about 8 rasas.
Hmm.
And later on, the ninth one was added, which was called the Shanta Rasa. Ninth one came somewhere in the 14th to 15th century. The
Hmm.
original Natya Shastra only talks about 8 rasas. Now, Natya Shastra talks about exploring the rasa. So we
Hmm.
have got all the 8 rasas in us. So there is a very interesting concept in the Natya Shastra which is called the Sthai Bhava. So the Sthai Bhava is like a foundational bhava which all of us have, the foundational feeling. So how angry, how sorrowful, how happy. So we have a Sthai Bhava. And that
Hmm.
Sthai Bhava for each one of us is manifested differently. So what we study, so let us say I'm reading a, a part of the Ramayana or the Bible or
Hmm.
maybe the Quran. Right?
Hmm.
If you read the first seven verses of the Quran, only the first 7 verses, it has a beautiful sthai bhava of connecting with the world, with the universe. So you just read the first 7 ayat of the Quran, and it tells you how to connect emotionally with the world, with the universe.
Hmm.
So when we read stories from the Mahabharata, the Panchatantra, the Jataka, it takes you on different levels of bhava, which you explore. And this you don't do alone. That is important. That all of this is done together.
Yes.
So you do
In group work.
invariably, yeah. These days after the European Revolution in printing, people began to withdraw into a private space with text.
Yes.
But that is now not how these texts are to be consumed. These texts are to be consumed with each other. Because every time you read the Ramayana with others and others read it to you, you connect to a different bhava. Depending on your own biophysical, biochemical condition, you connect to a different bhava. Sometimes I find Dashratha is a miserable character, and sometimes I find Dashratha is such a brave man. And sometimes I find the same character so stupid, and sometimes I find the same character so fantastic. Because I am in a particular condition, and then we are in a particular condition. So the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Jataka, the Quran, the Bible, they're supposed to be read together. They're not supposed to be taken in a book and put into the corner. It's not Shakespeare. It is Bible. It's Quran.
Yes.
You're supposed to read it together. So I've done these readings, and it is phenomenal because they're supposed to be read. They're all what we have a very interesting tradition called the Shruti Grantha,
Hmm. Hmm.
the hearing.
The
These are all Shruti Grantha. The Bible, the Quran, the Veda, Upanishad, they're all Shruti Grantha. We are supposed to speak them and listen to them and kind of tell our experiences of doing it.
yeah.
So that is a very interesting modality in Indian psychology. Then music is another one. The Indian music, all the sa re ga ma pa da ni sa are specific frequencies. So if
Yes.
sa is 400 megahertz, then re is so many numbers above it. It is
Hmm.
always a frequency. And then there are the way the sound moves up or down. If it is taken up or down, it has therapeutic purposes. So the ragas are not merely for entertainment.
Yeah.
They have therapeutic purposes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So, what you're also saying is that all these resources that we have in the Indian culture itself, including the Bible, the Quran, the mythologies of Mahabharata, Ramayana, or the Vedas, all of them go way beyond just talking about religious sentiments and actually talk about the universal wisdom of the
Yeah,
being and of connecting with the universe and the world around us. And
yeah,
reading them collectively will give us um, layers of meaning and understanding to it.
yeah, yeah.
And will also help it will also help therapeutic work in general.
Yes,
Right.
it does. It does.
Yes.
Yeah,
And music, of course. Yes, because I think on a very layperson level, also, we do see that when I listen to a particular raga or a particular tune, it makes me feel a particular way. If I can
yeah,
tune into that and I can actually reflect on that, I'll be able to understand that better. Right?
yes.
So thank you so much, Dr. Sanjay, for being with us today and really, really enlightening us. I think these were some beautiful perspectives that are seldom talked about or talked about very little. So thank you for bringing it up today. And yes, of course, to understand more about different perspectives of trauma and how therapists work and prepare themselves to meet these needs. We have an international conference coming up. Apara India is organizing its third international virtual conference on trauma, which is happening on the 30th June, 1st and 2nd of July from 2 to 6 p.m. All the details are there on the website, and I would really request everybody watching us here to please go on to the website and register if they already haven't, because you'll get to hear a lot more perspectives and a lot more different ways in which people are working with trauma and how they have evolved as therapists through their work. So, Dr. Sanjay, I know I'll see you there definitely, but I would also like you to personally just invite
Yeah.
everyone.
Yes, this is a very interesting conference, this is now the third year. And
Yes,
every year we have been adding very important value to this whole idea of trauma and closure.
Yes.
And we are also evolving as we look at these
Absolutely.
issues. I remember from the first conference of closure, and now in the third, I have myself changed. My whole ideas and systems have changed.
Yes.
And that's what I think this is all about.
Yes. So hope to see everyone there. And you can send your questions to us in the comments, and we will surely forward them to Dr. Sanjay and get them answered. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay.